Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 9, Ms. Hellfire. Episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So we start the episode with Prue trying to arrange her schedule so that she can attend a class with Phoebe and not being very successful at it because of how busy she is, and getting a call from her new boss, the vice president of Bucklands, who has called an emergency staff meeting at 9:30. We then see Piper coming home from having spent what is implied to be several days over at Dan's house. And as they are kind of joking with Piper about that fact, suddenly bullets come through the conservatory's windows and they have to hide behind the table. They then are distracted with a noise at the front door when Ms. Hellfire then comes from behind them and attempts to kill them, but Prue uses her power to send the bullets back at her, ending up with her dying. They then call Daryl over while going through her things and realize that she is an assassin that was sent to kill them alongside several other names that are already crossed out except for one, which is M. Steadwell, and was also aware of the fact that they were witches as their powers are indicated on the next page of her hit book. Daryl then arrives and they reveal to him that they are witches in order to get his help in putting the body on ice so that they can try to figure out who is trying to kill them. And he agrees to do so. He and Phoebe go off and save M. Steadwell, and Prue goes into work with Piper, and then after they stop by Buckland's, they are going to go to the apartment of Ms. Hellfire that they had found within her things to kind of get more information. And it is at the meeting when Prue is told basically she has a specific amount of time to raise a certain amount of money, and if she doesn't manage to, her job's on the line, and she is partnered with Jack in order to raise this money. And she is so torn, needing to be in two places at once, that she does, in fact, duplicate herself and she astral projects to where Piper is waiting in the hallway outside of the conference room for the first time, before, of course, then rejoining into one, and they go to the apartment. She checks out the bedroom, loves the wardrobe that Ms. Hellfire has, and starts trying it on, which is why when DJ arrives, having been sent by Bane, who is hired by Barbas to basically kill 13 witches so that he can get free, as he's managed to negotiate a second chance instead of having to wait the I can't remember, from Fear to Eternity. I think it was it 1300 years, and it does happen to be Friday the 13th. So she goes and meets Bane. They have a bit of a flirtation. She then checks base with her sisters, where they have managed to save M. Steadwell and are working on things on their end. While doing a quote to fix the windows, Dan also asks Piper to move in with him, but says he doesn't want to push her, and she, of course, isn't as enthusiastic as I think he would have expected her to be. But anyways, Prue then, basically while Prue is checking base with her sisters, DJ and Barbas have gone to the morgue and have found out that instead of M. Steadwell, it is in fact Ms. Hellfire on the slab. And so they've realized the double cross, which is why when Prue then comes back to Bane's area to talk about, how there's still time to kill the sisters and she hasn't done that yet, but she's come back to see him, blah, blah, blah. They, of course, kiss, and then DJ informs Bane that she is an imposter. He lures Prue to a back office where Barbas then brainwashes her into thinking that demons have taken over her sisters and are going to kill her sisters, which is her greatest fear now that she has released her fear of drowning. So basically, she then goes back to Ms. Hellfire's apartment, and the sisters go to the apartment to check on Prue because she missed her check-in. And Prue then attacks her sisters, and they take advantage of her new power to basically force her to split into two so that they can convince the astral her that they are the real them, like her real sisters, not imposters. And then when she rejoins, the brainwashing has been broken. They then go back to where Barbas is, and they basically freeze him for the few seconds or minutes left until midnight. And when he unfreezes, it is to the chimes of the clock that it is now midnight, and he is vanquished once again, having not met his deadline. And then at the end, we find out that Piper isn't ready to move in with Dan, so she has decided to reject his offer of moving in, at least for now, which Phoebe is glad about because she thinks that she needs to be with her sisters a little bit longer. And then on Prue's side, Jack comes over to tell her, like, basically, I've been working all day. We're going to lose our jobs. What have you been doing, partner? And Prue then tells him that she was working on an anonymous estate donation, which is basically all of Ms. Hellfire's very, very expensive clothing, jewelry, etc., that she is going to sell, but she does value it at 275,000. However, it does need to be donated to a cause that is, I believe, against violence in order for them to get the donation, and then they two decide to go out and celebrate together as their jobs are secured. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we're going to rank the episode on our two ranking lists. The first is our mostly objective ranking list, and the other one is the personal opinion ranking list. So as always, we start with our mostly objective rank values. And we're going to start, as always, on the positive side. So first off, we have our single episode supporting character introductions, and this is Bane's right-hand man, DJ, and the victim, the only other victim to survive, Ms. Hellfire, Marcy Steadwell. And they are each worth 1 point. We then get our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Bane Jessup, who will recur, and is our semi-villain of the episode. And then we have our multi-season supporting character development, which is, of course, Daryl finally learning the full truth. Obviously, he's known that they have a secret, and he's known that it's big, and he hasn't wanted to know it. However, given the circumstances of this episode, he finally is like, you have to tell me the truth now, I guess, because I can't keep pretending, especially if I'm going to be asking them to, put this body on ice, this unexplainably dead body, which was killed by bullets from a gun that she herself fired, and there's no other fingerprints or anything. And so that is when the sisters basically say they are witches. This mortal assassin was sent by a demon to kill them, and they need time to figure it out so that they can defeat the demon. But even though he has now been told the truth, and he accepts it pretty gracefully, to be honest, most likely because of all the weird stuff he's had from and all the freaky cases he's handled, I think he kind of is open-minded now to it, more so than he was in season 1. But Phoebe is like super excited that he knows and is like trying to like say, is there anything you want to know about what we do? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't want to know a thing. As they're like racing to save Marcy. But it is nice that finally he knows the truth, because I feel like that's finally getting to the Daryl that I remember from, the later seasons, which is honestly the Daryl we're more familiar with. So that is worth 3 points. We then get our multi-season main character growth, which is, of course, Prue's powers advancing and her gaining the astral projection power, which is the first of the sisters to gain a new power and have their powers grow to that extent. And this, of course, is a big accomplishment, so it's worth 4 points. And then we also have the main relationship development, which is, of course, Piper having spent several days over at Dan's to the point where her sisters are making fun of her for not remembering who she is, wondering, oh yeah, we did have another sister. What was her name again? And then bringing a bunch of fake names in to kind of make fun of her for having spent so much time. And of course, they're at a point where he feels that he wants her to move in. She herself is not quite at that point yet, but she does find the offer tempting, which shows that she is close to being at that point in the relationship at this stage, which of course is a pretty big development, and that is also worth 4 points, bringing us up to 15 on our positive side. But there were a couple of negatives. So the first one that I put down, this is where the bias and judgment comes in. So the one thing that does bother me about the series is that they don't have really any of the important conversations between couples on screen. Like right now we're thinking Prue is with Jack. She's, gone to drinks with him. She's gone to dinner with him. They're going out to celebrate at the end of this episode. She's clearly has something with Jack, but we haven't heard any conversations. Are they official? Are they exclusive? We don't get to hear those conversations. The show very rarely, just in general, doesn't have those types of conversations on screen. So we as an audience are kind of left ambiguous, like, is she in a relationship with this person that she has seemingly gone on several dates with at this point and works with, etc., etc. Because we don't know and are left ambiguous, it makes episodes like this one a little bit difficult because seemingly Prue is in a relationship with Jack, having gone on, like I said, several dates together, seemingly even at the end of the episode, still going to go out to celebrate together, having their flirty back and forth, him kind of like shielding her and protecting her from the boss. Like, they seem to be in a relationship. And yet with Bane, she was happy to basically flirt with him, kiss him, grind on him in the on a dance floor, spare him at the end of the episode for the police to take to jail. Like, she and Bane definitely had a short little chemistry filled flirtation that included physical intimacy of kissing, while we as the audience have been under the impression that she's with Jack. Now, like I said, we don't get to know the important conversations of whether she is exclusive with Jack or official with Jack. I would like to think better of her, that she wouldn't be going around kissing and grinding on other guys if she is in a relationship with Jack, even if it's more of a casual relationship. But either way, because it is in that is ambiguous, to me I'm going to put it in the very nearly two-timing category. And better safe than sorry, and the fact that they left us ambiguous, didn't give a proper explanation for the behaviors, I still think that in and of itself is a negative on the episode. So I am counting the negative messaging or behavior of Prue basically like two-timing Jack with Bane for the duration of the episode, and that's a -2 points. And then our final one is, of course, the weaker dislikable supporting character. And this is Marcy Steadwell. I understand that she was put in there probably for like comedic effect, like she was really perky. She was probably put in there to be like funny antics, haha. Except to me, I always find it distasteful if you're going into somebody else's home, someone who has saved your life, to like just basically make yourself at home, take over the house, reorganize their kitchen. She then does a spell with like the sage stick or smudge stick that she's like lighting and like waving the smoke around. You don't know what kind of allergies the people in the house might have or sensitivities. And she's like running around with that. She then had this like spray thing that she was also spraying around with protection spells and whatnot. And it's like, you're a guest in somebody's home, somebody who has saved you, you're under protective custody. Like, this kind of behavior, it's just not respectful, in my opinion. When you are a guest, like, you should be respectful of your hosts. And I mean, the sisters were obviously and clearly annoyed by her behavior, though they weren't like openly antagonistic to her. So I guess that in her mind isn't okay to do that. But even like when she's leaving with Daryl, she's basically completely unremorseful. She's talking about how she's done such a nice thing for them, making their house smelly and smoky before going with him and implying like she's just going to do the same behavior to him. And I understand that the goal with the character was comedy, and to a certain extent, she was kind of funny, but also her behavior was, at least to me personally, a little bit offensive because, like I said, if you are a guest in somebody's home, especially somebody who has saved your life, you should be respectful of the space, at least ask for politeness' sake. Oh my gosh, your kitchen, it's so disorganized. This isn't very harmonious for the magic. Do you mind if I make some changes while I'm here? Like, ask. Be polite. You are a guest. It's not your house. So I consider it a negative in that sense, and therefore that brings us to a total, mostly objective rank of 9 out of 10. So, as a reminder of our season 2 rankings so far, with the addition of this episode, in first place we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, She's a Man Baby, a Man, They're Everywhere, P3H2O. In sixth is this episode, Ms. Hellfire, then Morality Bites, That Old Black Magic, and currently in last is The Devil's Music. So now we come to my personal ranking, and I'm not going to repeat myself on the whole Jack potential 2 timing thing, um, or the fact that I'm not really big on Marcy Steadwell. Instead, I'm going to note a couple of things that I felt stood out in the episode and affected my personal ranking. So, one of the successful pieces of comedy I felt in the episode was that in Ms. Hellfire's little hit book, it shows like all three of the sisters and their powers. It has Prue telekinesis, Piper freezing time, and then Phoebe, it just writes negligible. And I just thought, well, that's kind of rude, but at the same time, also not overly poor. I also mentioned this in From Fear to Eternity, but Barbas is my favorite demon of like all the demons, and that even includes Cole, just so that we're clear. Like, this is my favorite demon of the entire series. I think Barbas is great, and I'm always happy to see when he is in an episode, and I always enjoy those episodes just a little bit more because it has my favorite demon in it. And even though his part in this was quite small, I did enjoy it. It was a great episode because of his existence. It's also just noted, kind of a thrown out comment by Dan, that Jenny is no longer in the series because she has moved back with her parents and is no longer living with Dan. So I don't believe we see her again. Or if we do, it would be like as a guest because she's staying with her uncle again for a short period. But at this point, she's pretty much moved back with her parents. We shouldn't be seeing her again, which, as I wasn't overly fond of Jenny, I'm not upset about. Then, of course, we have Bane, and outside of the whole potential cheating scandal, which I think only I care about, to be honest, he seems like a really great guy. I mean, he's wealthy. Like Prue, she's taken by DJ to see him, and he asks her how she liked the roses he sent her, and she says she'd prefer orchids. And then they have their like little flirtation back and forth, and then she's driven back to the apartment. And when she walks in with Bane, who insisted on driving her home, the apartment is filled with orchids, which she had requested and just like offhand mentioned just briefly, which I thought was like how nice is that? He hasn't even met Ms. Hellfire. That's how Prue's able to impersonate her. And yet he already calls her the woman that he loves, which again, I'm like, that is so sweet. And then he has like a gift ready for her as well that he tells her to open once he's left. And like she purposefully is kind of like, even after she gets away and she could just go on and they just avoid Barbas for the time until midnight, she still goes back because she wants to see him again. When she goes in, the club or venue that he runs as part of his, I'm thinking he's kind of like a gang leader. He's definitely a criminal something, and like the higher tiered, like white collar crime, I would say. Not necessarily like the one out there doing all the thug life, but the higher class, got a lot of money, got it through probably not legal means. Anywho, I'm not really sure what you would call him. Definitely the boss, though. And he's kind of turned his location, which was empty earlier that day, into a club. She comes in, he immediately moves forward to dance with her. DJ then pulls him aside so that he can tell Bane about Ms. Hellfire's actual death and that this is an imposter. And then Prue clearly is having a great time because she like kissed him. She was grinding up on him. He gets pulled aside. She then starts grinding on somebody else who's like a random dude in the crowd. And then he, of course, comes back and is able to lure her into the office because she's, for some reason, trusting him because they have such great chemistry. And honestly, I like Bane. So when he recurs, I'm not mad about it. And I do think that they have good chemistry as characters. That it is unfortunate that Bane was the semi-villainous character of this episode because I feel like more so than Jack, they do have the better chemistry. And then, not really impacting the score, but just a question that I would love a second opinion on. I know why, for plot purposes, like a lot of these questions that I have, I understand why the show went the direction they did from the perspective of the writer of the show, why they needed to go that direction. But here's the thing. Barbas, he's given a second chance. He can free himself from the underworld forever, have all the time he wants to wreak his fear and havoc on the world. All he has to do is kill 13 unmarried witches before midnight. And he could choose any of them. They don't even have to be witches with powers, just witch practitioners, as Marcy Steadwell is. He could have killed 13 just rando women, gotten himself free, met his deadline, and then gone after the charmed ones once he was free and probably won. And like I said, I understand from the perspective of the writers of the show, obviously, he would choose to go after Prue, Piper, and Phoebe, but I'm like, they're the ones who defeated him last time. If we were being realistic, if this was a real world event, I don't think Barbas would go after the people who defeated him when he has one chance, one second chance. I feel like he should have gone after 13 random girls that, have no defense against him, like just witch practitioners, not even real witches. That way they can't really fight against him. Ms. Hellfire would have succeeded. She succeeded on all of them and even would have succeeded on Marcy had the bomb gone off any sooner than when it did because Phoebe and Daryl made it just in time. And then he would have been free to go after the sisters with the power boost of not having a deadline. You could have just haunted them for like until he succeeded and they would have died. And of course, for the show, we don't want that to happen. But I feel like that would make so much more sense. And because that makes so much sense and is so easy to think of as what would have made sense, I feel like it kind of ruins the suspension of disbelief in the episode. You're kind of like, this isn't realistic because there's no way he would go after them again. At least not until he was free. But tell me if you agree with that, like if that would have broken your suspension of disbelief while watching like it did mine. And with that, I will now reveal that my personal ranking for this episode was a 9 out of 10. I felt that it was a very good episode. I like pretty much everything about it. It's one of the stronger episodes of the season and even the series overall. Like I said, anything that has my favorite demon in it is going to get a high mark from me. And so, as for our personal ranking so far, in first place we have P3H2O. This episode falls into second as Ms. Hellfire. Then we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, They Are Everywhere, She's a Man Baby, a Man, The Devil's Music, Morality Bites, and my personal least favorite so far was That Old Black Magic. All right, so that brings us now to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far, where we're ranking each of the seasons against each other. And on our mostly objective ranking side, season 1 finished out with a 73.18%. And so far for season 2, we've gathered 74 out of 220 points. And then on the personal ranking side, we had season 1 rounding off, finishing with 71.50% or 50%. And so far for season 2, we have only gathered 46 out of 220. However, I know there's a pretty big gap right now between the objective ranking and the personal ranking for this season, but having been a rewatcher, I can say most of the really good episodes kind of happen towards the ending of this thing. Like a lot of the less exciting episodes were kind of put towards the beginning, and I feel like we're now at that turning point where we're going to start seeing a lot more of the higher scoring episodes. So that gap should, in theory, close up a little bit, hopefully. And having said that, with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 9, Miss Hellfire. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.